Back in the day, Amanda and I used to take Lone Cases road trips whenever we could string a few days off. We both lived out east, Delaware, and any excuse to get the hell out of town was a good one. We de-plan our routes around restaurants that we de-seen on TV or Weird Airbnb, and B is in the middle of nowhere. Long weekends, holiday breaks, and the occasional mental health Monday that we'd call in sick for. We made it a habit to drive hundreds of miles with no real goal except fun and escape. We were in our mid-20s. Hangovers were brutal but recoverable. Every trip ended up with greasy food, sore backs, and stories that we'd never tell our mothers. Amanda liked to drive. She said it helped her feel in control. I didn't mind. I liked being the co-pilot, scrolling through playlists, reading old printed-out directions from MapQuest, or watching the little TomTom GPS freak out when we took another wrong turn. Later, we upgraded to smartphones, which made travel a lot smoother at first. What used to be us just sticking to the big highways and familiar exits turned into a game. Who could find the fastest shortcut, the weirdest detour, the most backwards route that shaved off 20 minutes? We'd zoom in on the map, pick some obscure little offshoot that looped around a mountain or snake through farmland, and give it a go. Usually, we'd end up on a gravel road surrounded by cornfields or pass through towns with one gas station and no stop lights. Sometimes it was a bust, and we'd backtrack half an hour. Other times it was magic, like when we found that speakeasy in Kentucky just by chasing a shortcut off I-64. We always felt like we were on to something, like real explorers. But that one trip through West Virginia, that one changed the game. That was the one that soured us on the shortcuts. I can still remember Amanda tapping on the screen and saying, "This will save us at least 90 minutes. Look, County Road 217 cuts right through the hills and drops us off into Charleston from the north." And I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's roll." And God, do I wish I would have said no. The road narrowed fast. We were only 10 or 15 minutes into the shortcut, and road, the shoulder had disappeared. The paint on the asphalt was mostly gone now, and we hadn't seen another vehicle since we turned off the highway. I held the phone in my lap, tapping to zoom in on the blue line that we were following. Amanda had both hands on the wheel, sunglasses sliding down her nose as she squinted into the sun. "You sure this is right?" she asked me. "Yeah," I said. "Cuts 90 minutes, comes out just west of Charleston." We skipped 3 mountain curves and a whole mess of Sunday traffic. Amanda made a face. "It just looks empty." "It's fine," I said, even though I was starting to feel a twitch in my gut. The map showed a bunch of little townships along the stretch, like stepping stones through the hills. Burnwood, Cardamom, Ebb Hollow, but so far, nothing. No towns, no houses, no signs of life. Just endless turns through dry pines and crests over that gave way more to the same. The road dropped into a valley and kicked up a cloud of dust as we passed a rotting billboard for Guthrie's world-famous smoked meats. The thing was bullet-pocketed and hanging on by a single corner. Amanda didn't say anything, but I could tell she was just as put off as I was. We passed a cluster of old trailers that looked long abandoned. A busted-out sedan half swallowed up by the weeds. A barn with its roof peeled off like a sardine can. I felt my stomach knot tighter. "I think these towns are dead," I said, and Amanda glanced over at me. "Huh? Boomtowns, maybe? Mining or rail? They're still on the map, but they haven't been towns in decades now." I could see her chew that over. Then she shook her head. "You want to turn around?" We were 25 minutes in by then, and I stared at the screen. The shortcut was almost halfway done. "Nah," I muttered. "Let's just keep going. We might as well finish it now." Amanda nodded, but she didn't smile again after that. The road narrowed again and curved through this shallow ravine. On either side, there were husks of buildings, clapboard houses gutted by fires, a post office with ivy growing through its windows. a school bus with no wheels, and a family of crows nesting on the roof. We passed this old wooden sign that said Burnwood Pop 214. Then below that, spray painted in red, not anymore. I think that should have been the moment that I said screw it and called it, but I still didn't do it. I told Amanda that we were probably close to the other side. Maybe another 10 miles, maybe 15. That wasn't a lie. I just didn't want to admit that I'd made a bad call. A few miles later, just when the gas light blinked on and Amanda let out this sharp underscore, we saw it. Hadley Springs. A crooked white sign marked the entrance, swaying on rusted chains. The town itself was better preserved than the others. Buildings with full roofs, intact windows, and a main drag that ran straight through. No trash, no graffiti, and cars parked along the curbs like residents had just stepped inside for lunch. But there was nobody outside. We rolled past this small diner with an open sign unlit. A barber shop, an insurance office, a church with no name, not one single person, no movement, no sound, just a soft roll of our tires, and Amanda whispering, "This is weird." "Yeah, I know," I responded. "Just keep driving." We were maybe halfway through the town when the engine made that low gurgle sound that it does before it runs completely dry. "We're not going to make it," Amanda said, panic creeping up into her voice. And then, as if on cue, a gas station appeared on the corner. Small squad, old school, just 2 pumps and a little shack of a building beside them. There was a man out front. He looked to be in his early 30s, thin as a wire, wearing a sweat dark in flannel and faded jeans. His hair was long and yellow-white, tied back into this greasy ponytail. He was sweeping something off the concrete. As we pulled in, he leaned the broom up against the wall and turned towards us with a grin. Amanda eased her window down. "Y'all just passing through?" he asked. His voice was thick with that mountain drawl, every word dragging. Yeah," Amanda said. "We're headed west. Took a shortcut." He laughed. "A lot of folks do that. GPS will send you to all kinds of ways out here. Usually come in thinking there's more to see. Usually the same thing too." "What's that?" I asked him. He shrugged. "That the place don't look right." Amanda handed him a 20. "We just need enough to make it to Charleston." He nodded and started pumping gas. We watched him through the side mirror. I didn't want to look around, but I did, and what I saw chilled me more than anything yet. Behind the diner window, 2 faces staring out. Not blinking, not moving, just watching. Across the street, in a curtained upstairs window, a silhouette, broad shoulders, head tilted like it was trying to listen. Then the other window and another. All of them still, and all of them focused directly on us. They didn't look off enough to scream like horror movie style. They weren't mutants or monsters. They were just off, like they'd been raised up in a place where both daylight and manners weren't commonplace. When the man finished, he capped the tank and came back around, handing Amanda her receipt with a look that I won't forget. "You girls are lucky," he said. Amanda blinked. "What?" "Coming through during sunup," he said. "Most folks come after dark, and when they do, they don't get to leave." He let that sentence hang there like a noose. Then he smiled and tapped the roof of the car. "Y'all drive safe now." "What do you mean by that?" The guy just winked. "Best get going is all," he said. "Unless you want to stay and feel some southern hospitality." The guy then licked his chapped lips. We didn't wait. Amanda peeled out of there like she was chasing God himself. The road out of Hadley Springs curved hard to the left, then pitched upward through this series of hills that seemed to go on forever and ever. We didn't talk. Amanda's knuckles were white bone on the steering wheel, and I kept looking behind us through the side mirror, convinced that we'd see something or someone following. But the town stayed behind us, tucked into a valley like an infected wound. "Don't say anything," Amanda finally muttered, eyes locked on the road. "Just don't." And I didn't. Not until we hit the main highway again 30 miles later, and civilization came rushing back in a form of roadside motel, waffle houses, and blinking lights of Sheetz gas stations. Amanda pulled in and parked, and we sat in silence for a moment, letting the AC hum between us. Then she said, "What the hell was that?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I kept thinking they were going to come out and try something or stop us." She looked over. "That guy at the gas station. What do you think he meant by that, about people staying?" "I don't know," I said again. "Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just some kind of joke. Didn't sound like a joke to me." Then I didn't respond to her. We went inside, bought some water and some chips, and the cashier didn't even look up. Amanda leaned against the counter while I paid and said, "You ever been so scared that you felt it in your teeth?" I nodded back at her. That night, we got a cheap room, double beds, and a TV bolted to the dresser. We didn't go out for drinks like we planned to either. We didn't order food. We just sat in those same clothes that we wore all day, watching reruns and half listening for engine noises outside. Eventually, Amanda passed out. I didn't know. Not until the sky went from black to blue, and I knew the worst part of the night was over. I kept thinking about the creeps watching us from the windows. We took the long route home, highway all the way. No more back roads, no more shortcuts. And every time Amanda brought up a new trip, a new detour that she read about online, I shut it down before she could even finish. That was 5 years ago. We don't travel together anymore. Nothing bad happened between us. No falling out or anything. It just got real after that one. I never go through West Virginia without a full tank of gas anymore either. I used to hike alone all the time through creeks, up mountains, across long stretches of forgotten forest trails. Didn't matter. If I had a pack, a few granola bars, and a decent forecast, I was out the door. There was nothing like being off-grid, far from people where your thoughts could stretch their legs a little. I used to brag about the number of solo trips that I'd done. My friends thought I was nuts. They'd hit the gym or go drink downtown, and I'd be halfway up some canyon in silence, watching the shadows shift across the stone. Then I made the wrong turn. It happened 3 years ago, and it changed everything. I still hike, yeah, but only with groups now. Crowded trailheads, well-labeled loops, paper maps in the pack, and fully charged GPS clipped to the strap. I stick to the popular stuff, where you re-guaranteed to pass a dozen dogs and soccer moms before noon. If it's not paved or packed with dads, I don't want it. All because of that one day, that one _shortcut. I was hiking Welsher Wash, a long winding creek that cuts through a mix of rec areas and wilderness. Families hung out by the parking lot, splash in the shadows. But the deeper you go down, the fewer signs there are, less noise, less people, and that's what I wanted, quiet. I pushed upstream for a few hours, deeper than I'd ever gone before, until it was just water, trees, and the breeze through the canyon walls. It was beautiful. And then I got smart, or at least I thought I did. I told myself I could cut time on the way back, saved my legs a few miles, and that shortcut nearly got me killed. Welsher Wash has always been my favorite. Secluded, winding, clear enough to drink straight from. Families usually hung out near the trailhead, barbecuing or letting kids splash around in the wide pools. But I wasn't there for that. I wanted distance, solitude. The further up the wash I went, the quieter it got. Hours passed, and the trail thinned into deer tracks. No signage, no people, just water, rock, cottonwoods, and time. That day, I pushed harder than usual, deeper than I'd ever gone before. I didn't really have a goal in mind. I just wanted quiet. I passed 2 dry forks and an old beaver dam, even as Old Elk's goal caught in a tangle of willows. We wanted to empty out even more of our belongings to see if we can get the money pile up to $1,000. I was starting to sell some of my collector items, like antique chinaware, paintings, and things I largely considered just extra. My husband was on a mission to move his big 11-piece pearl drum kit. He played a bit in college. It was just one jam band that maybe had a half a dozen shows throughout his life. But for some reason, he always held on to that drum set. In the back of his mind, he always wanted to come back to it. But now, 10 years had gone by, and he hadn't so much as even picked up a stick during that whole hiatus. He realized that the drum kit was really just a dream and was something that needed to go. We came up with a fair price and added it to our ever-evolving Facebook Marketplace offering. It was the highest mark item at the time and was going to make more than double the amount of savings that we accumulated. We started to get some bites, but they were mostly just offers that my husband wasn't interested in entertaining. People wanted to make trades or payments or just make lowball offers in general. My husband wasn't having it, stuck firm on the price. He knew what that kit was worth, and he'd already moved the price down significantly. The price was right. Now we just needed to wait for the right buyer. A week or so later, I was home alone. I had the day off. I was going through my normal morning routines when I saw that I had a notification. Someone had commented on the post about the drum set. He said it looked great. It had an amazing price and would love to come take a look at it. He ended his comment by asking if he could send us a DM, to which I replied yes. I finished up what I was doing, the laundry or the dishes, something like that, and called my husband, Mitchell. "Hey, someone commented on your drum set," I said. "Does he seem serious?" He asked. "I can't tell yet. He just commented on it. But he's the most serious person so far. He wants to come take a look at it. What time are you going to be home?" I don't know," Mitchell stammered through the phone. He was a site manager, and they were putting up a new building. His hours during this project could vary. I'm not really sure. So if he's wanting to see it this morning, or even afternoon, and you feel comfortable, go ahead and let him come by and take a look at it. The price is firm, though. This is just purely a quality check of the instrument, he explained very clearly. Sure, sounds good. Anything special I should mention? That it's been collecting dust for 10 years, and may as well be brand new. I got to go, though. I love you. I love you too, I said, and then hung up. That was pretty much all I wanted to know. Make sure he was okay with the guy coming to look at it while he wasn't here, and if there was anything special that I should say. Other than that, we lived close to our neighbors, and I knew them pretty well. Also had a decent amount of security within the house. A camera, a gun, that kind of thing. Robbery would be risky for anyone coming into our house, or at least so I thought. I hit the guy back on the post and told him that we were good to go, to which he followed up with a DM. He said his name was Ryan, and that he was very excited about finding such a killer deal. I gave him a little background info on the drum set, and that I would be home all day if he wanted to swing by and take a look at it. Ryan said he had some other things going on, but could stop by around 1:00 p.m. I was just a few hours off, and it suited me perfectly. I gave him our address. I told him to hit me back on Messenger if anything changes, or if he had any trouble finding the house. With that, he signed off, and I resumed whatever I was doing. I actually looked up a YouTube video and decided that I was going to clean the drum set, and I wanted to know the best and safest way to do so. It really had collected a healthy layer of dust. I wanted it looking good for whenever this guy came around. If Mitchell came home and I had the thing sold, boy, he'd be happy. After I got it dusted and shined up, I went and took a shower. I still had plenty of time before Ryan was supposed to show up, so I figured I'd get some more of my own chores done before I did the showing. I hopped out and started drying off, and then I just got this weird feeling. I couldn't place it at first, but it was like there was something that I didn't recognize beyond the bathroom window. We had one of those weird fog glass windows, so you could just see blurs and colors. No real definition through the glass, but there was something bright red in our driveway. At first, I thought it was maybe a neighbor or a delivery driver. I snuck into the bedroom and got dressed. As I quietly listened for anything weird, footsteps around the side of the house, or maybe somebody already inside. I really didn't know what to expect, so I kept my phone handy just in case. I snuck out to the kitchen and looked out the window. There was a red hatchback parked in the driveway right behind my car. Okay, not the weirdest thing, but definitely unusual. Just as I, getting ready to put on my sandals and ask the neighbors if they know anything, I see something. There's a man outside the living room window, essentially standing in the front yard, nowhere near his car. I keep an eye on him, and I don't really panic at first, because he looks like, I'm not sure. Maybe he's confused, lost. He looked like a little kid. It's really hard to describe. Definitely a full-grown man skulking around my property, though. But the look in his eyes was that of a child. It's weird. Still, I pulled up my phone and had my husband's number ready to dial. This guy was picking around our garden, mostly the herb patch where we grew a bunch of stuff in little squares near the front of the house. He touched just about everything and started helping himself to links of rosemary and thyme, handfuls of basil leaves, mint, even oregano. When he had this nice little stash, he took it back to his car and tucked it inside the console. I figured he was going to hop in the car and leave, but to my surprise, he went back to the area near the window and started fiddling with the hose. He got it unwrapped from the holder and turned the knob, and then started watering the herb garden. He gave it a few spurts, then put the nozzle in his mouth and started drinking from it. He did this for like 10 minutes. No joke. After he was satisfied, he made sure the hose was untangled, then started walking over to his car. I kid you not, this man washed his entire hatchback in my driveway with that hose, with my own water. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I was so perplexed with what I was watching. I didn't even bother to stop him. This guy was clearly crazy. Or maybe he thought he was at a different house. And the terrain started to look like Welserwash again. Somewhere behind me, a man was still yelling. Something about property rights. Something about hikers think they own the world. Then I didn't hear anything. Just the water and the wind and my gasping breaths. I followed the creek, pushing as fast as my legs would go. Every noise in the brush setting off alarms in my brain. A snapping twig, a bird taking off. Even the sound of my own back shifting felt too loud. I kept imagining him showing up on the trail in front of me, waiting with that rifle. But he didn't, and I didn't see him again. It took me nearly 2 hours to get back to the main trail. My socks were soaked, one knee bloodied from a fall that I barely even remember. I passed 2 kids in flip-flops carrying pool noodles, and I nearly burst into tears. Their mom looked at me funny, like she could tell that something had gone wrong, but nobody said anything. At the trailhead, I climbed back into my car, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for 15 minutes straight. I didn't even take off my boots. I just sat with my hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead while my brain tried to put the pieces in some kind of order. Eventually, I drove off. I didn't report it, didn't tell the rangers, didn't file a complaint or call the police. And I know how that sounds, but you have to understand, this wasn't some idiot taking potshots from a distance. This guy meant it. He wanted to scare me, maybe even worse. And I knew deep down in my gut that if I went back with somebody in uniform, it would turn into something crazy. Besides, it was really on me. I made that call to go off trail. I saw the fence and went under it. He wasn't really wrong about that part. Still, I think about it constantly. I think about how close I was to stepping up to the house. About what if I knocked on the door? What if I hadn't noticed the first shot in time? I hear that crack sometimes when I close my eyes. Feel the sting of the bark still hitting my face. Smell the metal of the fence when I hit the dirt to crawl under it. That day ruins solo hiking for me. I don't care how many apps or GPS trackers I have now. How prepared I think I really am. I'm not going out alone. Not where there's nobody to hear you scream. Not where a wrong turn drops you into somebody's crosshairs. I still hike to this day, but only with others, only where there's cell service. I study maps. I look for trip reports, and I don't just wing it anymore, no matter how scenic the route might actually be. And I never ever take shortcuts. I was 16 when my mom took me on that trip. It was supposed to fix things between us. She worked nights, and I skipped school. We barely talked unless somebody was yelling. It wasn't like we hated each other. We were just two people living in the same house, orbiting each other and pretending that it didn't hurt. I think she thought I was gay. I thought she was checked out, just making underscore up about each other. She rented a car and planned 5 days through the Midwest. Said we'd see the ocean, eat everywhere worth eating, talk if we wanted to, or just listen to music if we didn't. I remember standing in the driveway, watching her pack snacks and a cooler full of gas station drinks like we were going to summer camp. She looked hopeful. I didn't have the heart to be a dick about it either. Truth is, it was a good trip. Great even. We drove through Kansas and Oklahoma, laughed at dumb billboards, crushed barbecue in Houston. She played her old playlist, Fleetwood Mac, Durant, and I played some of mine. There were hours where we just vibed. No tension, no weird pauses, just a mom and her kid in a rented SUV heading toward the saltwater. I didn't think anything would ever feel that normal again. But there was one part of the trip that I still can't talk about without getting those pins and needles feeling inside my hands. It wasn't supernatural or anything. We just stumbled into a part of the map that nobody was supposed to see. We were in Texas when it happened. Middle of nowhere, somewhere between Corpus Christi and God knows what. After we hit the ocean and taken our selfies, Mom decided we saved time on the way back by skirting the loop. "It'll be faster this way," she said, squinting at the GPS, waving off my half-hearted objections. I couldn't really argue. I wasn't old enough to drive, didn't understand maps, and wasn't really paying that much attention anyway. I just wanted to get back to the hotel and pass out with the AC blasting. The road we turned onto wasn't even paved the whole way. Big cracks, long patches of gravel, rust so close that it scraped the side mirrors, but it was quiet. After about 20 minutes, I realized we hadn't passed a single car. Not one. Just dried up fields, barbed wire fences, and the occasional buzzards circling overhead. Mom kept her cool for a while. Then she turned the music down. Then she cleared her throat a lot. She turned the music off completely. "We're fine," she said, gripping the wheel a little tighter. "We're still heading north." I checked my phone. No bars, of course. Just that little red X that meant that we were off-grid. "No service," I said. "Yeah," she muttered. "No kidding." We passed a cattle gate with a rusted sign that had no words, just a symbol that looked like a warning. Then came the buildings, 7 or 8 of them, dumped in the middle of nowhere, like somebody gave up on a project halfway through. Concrete blocks with doors that didn't lock, a steel warehouse with a faded biohazard sign. One of the buildings had a tar blowing on the roof and a giant red stencil that said, "Test area, no entry." Mom slowed the car. "The hell is this place?" I didn't answer her. I was too busy looking at the yellow radiation stickers, peeling off one side of the sheds. "I don't like this," she said. She put the car in reverse, but her hands were shaking. "We shouldn't be here. This is some kind of military testing or something. Just go," I said. "Please." She whipped the wheel around and floored it. Gravel spit up behind us. We didn't say a word for the next 7 miles. When she finally slowed down, she said, "We must have missed a turn." I leaned over the center console, peering through the windshield, trying to see anything familiar. That's when we passed that same cattle gate, the same rusted sign, the same buildings. "No," Mom whispered. "We didn't." "We're back," I responded. We just went in a full circle. We both looked at each other and then at the road in front of us. She didn't stop the car this time. She just turned left instead of right, kept her foot on the gas. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, praying for a bar, but still nothing. 15 minutes later, a new sign appeared. Metal, sun-faded, and covered in stickers and bullet holes. It said Mexico, 18 miles. Mom then hit the brakes so hard that our seatbelts locked up. "Mexico," she said. Okay, this can't be right. But it was. There was nothing else around. No houses, no businesses, just endless flat desert and that sign. The GPS was now frozen. The phone was dead. We were cooked in the middle of Texas, and now somehow looking at the Mexican border, almost like it was the last option. Mom pulled over now. We were both breathing heavy. She dug around the glove box for the charging cable and plugged her phone in. "We just need like 5 seconds of signal. That's all." The phone powered up, and we watched the bars. The charging cord was a 10FT supercharger for emergencies. Now we could try to send texts over without it burning up the battery, but nothing. I got up and held it in the air, turned slowly in the circle, thinking it would help, but still nothing. Just hot air, distant thunder, and a sky that was starting to dim around the edges. "I think maybe we should call 911, I said. My mom shook her head. "And tell him what? That we got lost and saw a building?" I guess she was right, even if I hated it. So we sat there drinking the last of the water, splitting a bag of trail mix, while the heat started to bleed out of the day. The wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, something metallic clanged, like a gate slamming shut. Then my mom stood up. "Dust," she said, pointing. "There's a car coming." Sure enough, a cloud of dust was rising in the distance, a big one. We both got up and started waving. And when that didn't feel like enough, I leaned over and started honking the horn in bursts. Headlights flashed back. The SUV, black, fast, and spotless, pulled off the road and came straight at us, eating up the ground like it had a purpose. By the time it skidded to a stop, we were standing in front of our rental, hands in the air. The doors opened, and 5 men stepped out. They were all dressed sharply, pressed shirts, dark jeans, heavy boots, gold chains, sunglasses, even though the sun was mostly gone now. One had a cigarette burning between his fingers. All of them had rifles, and not one of them was smiling. They said nothing, just fanned out in front of us. And then one motioned to the car. My mom looked and whispered, "Don't move." But it didn't matter. Another man waved us off quick and urgently. We stepped aside, and as soon as we did, 2 of them started yanking open our doors, going through the vehicle like they owned it themselves. I started to say something, anything, and one of them hit me. Just one time, metal against the side of my head, and lights out. I came to on my knees in the dirt, ears ringing, head pounding. My mom was crying softly next to me, hands still up. The men were laughing now, chattering in Spanish, but we didn't understand, tossing our snacks into the dirt, pulling wires from the dashboard. One of them held up my backpack and shook it out like it might be hiding something valuable. When nothing came out but a crushed protein bar in my hoodie, he threw it on the ground and spit on it. The one who hit me just stood nearby watching. No expression. I don't even think I saw him blink. None of them asked any questions. None of them said what they wanted. They never pointed the guns away either. So every second felt like it might be our last. And then, just like that, they stopped. One of them whistled, a sharp, casual note, like somebody calling a dog. The rest turned and headed back to the SUV. They piled in fast, revved the engine, and spun off in the direction they'd come from, kicking up the same trail of dust that they'd arrived with. My mom helped me to my feet. My head throbbed, and I could already feel the bruise blooming up against my cheekbone. I asked her what they took, and she said, "Nothing. They just looked." We got back in the car and just sat there for a moment. Doors locked, engine off. The silence afterward felt alien. I watched the sun finish dipping behind the horizon and waited for tears to come, but they didn't. I was too stunned for that. "Now I'm driving," Mom said finally, and I didn't argue with her. We turned the car around, rolled slowly in the opposite direction, and this time it only took about an hour and 45 minutes to see lights. A town, real pavement, cell signal. She sped into the first gas station we found, parked half on the curb, and ran inside. I stayed in the car, blinking at the overhead fluorescence, while people walked in and out with bags of chips and coffee. A few minutes later, she came back with a clerk and said the police were on their way. An officer showed up in less than 10 minutes. He looked more bored than he did concerned. Asked where it happened. Asked if we had any names, plates, or any idea which direction they'd gone. My mom explained to him that we'd been lost, and we thought that we were near the border, that we'd run into. She hesitated. Some men with guns. He didn't write much down. He just nodded a lot, told us we're lucky, then added that we shouldn't be driving around that area without a reason. He didn't say it like a warning. He said it like a judgment. They called in an EMT who checked my head, cleaned the cut, then asked if I wanted to go to the hospital. I said, "No. I want a shower, a bed, and I wanted to never ever think about any of this again." We got a hotel, a block from the police station. Basic room, 2 full beds, nothing fancy. Neither of us spoke for a very long time. I showered, sat on the edge of the bed in a towel, and watched my mom scroll through her phone with a blank look on her face. At some point, she put it down and looked at me. "Are you okay?" I nodded. Then she said, "You saved us, you know," waving them down like that, getting their attention. I shook my head. "No, I didn't. I got us into it." "If I hadn't honked," she cut me off. "We were already in it. You did what you thought would help us." That was the closest thing we ever got to talking about it. After that, we mostly just let it fade. Told the story once to my aunt, but left out all the stuff that would make people uncomfortable. Made it sound almost like an accident, like a moment that passed as quickly as it came. But it didn't pass. It stuck with me. Still does. I think about those buildings sometimes, about what kind of place has nuclear signs, with no fence, no guards, and no name. I think about how we looped back without realizing, like the desert didn't want us to leave. I think about those men in the SUV, how calm they were, how organized, how we were nothing to them, just 2 Americans who took the wrong road. That trip ended up fixing a lot between us, believe it or not. Not the ocean, not the playlists, not the barbecue, just surviving. A couple of summers ago, I was having some serious car problems. At the time, I was going through all kinds of other crap. My boyfriend and I had just broken up. My savings were depleted. I was caught up in some drama at the place that I was working. In the middle of all this hectic time, my car starts acting funny, shaking whenever it started, blowing clouds out of the exhaust. The dashboard throwing codes and check engine lights. Pretty much everything that could go wrong seemed to be happening to my car all at once. Here's the deal. I know absolutely nothing about cars. And you can say it's because I'm a girl, but even if I were a guy, I still probably wouldn't know anything. I don't really care about cars. I don't care about understanding them. I'm more than happy to pay someone to do all that work. Back then, though, especially being newly on my own, I had very little in the way of disposable income. So, When the car started chugging and rattling, it had me sweating right away. If it was anything major, I would be out of a car because there's no way I could afford it. One of my friends made a suggestion to me, and that was to find a local mechanic online to just run simple diagnostics, locate the problem, and maybe work out a more feasible solution, depending on what it would cost me. My friend had just recently needed to get some work done. Went to a guy advertising on Facebook, and not only did he fix everything wrong with her car, but he was totally transparent about the cost. The guy had since booked up and wouldn't be able to help me out for at least 3 weeks, or maybe even more. My car was getting worse and worse every time I started it. I got to work finding someone else online, and I started with Craigslist, but quickly found out I didn't like how just anonymous it was. I threw up a post and got dozens of responses within a day, but none of them had anything to do with fixing my car. It mostly was just a lot of unsolicited pictures and offers for dates and other kind of weird stuff. I scrapped that post within 24 hours, and from there ventured out into the world of Facebook Marketplace. This seemed to be way safer off of the jump. People could see my post, see what I was looking for, and the people that responded also had a name and a face. Half the people that I commented on I recognized from somewhere around town. They said they'd keep an eye out for an affordable mechanic or me. By that Friday, I got a message from a guy named Simon, and this guy seemed pretty legit. His profile was a few years old. Wasn't covered in over sexually post or political propaganda. He seemed normal, and his account had a long history of doing mechanic work. Lots of photos of him working on cars and garages, wearing jumpsuits in the shop, that kind of thing. Simon seemed legit from top to bottom, and with the situation that I was in, it was all I was really looking for. Through D-Miz, I learned that Simon was branching out into his own self-employment, was doing all his own work. He had worked for a major dealership in town, and then worked for a couple of shops after that. Was fully insured and certified. This was music to my ears. All the exact stuff that I wanted to hear. Simon said he had one job where he was finishing up, and that I would be next in line. We exchanged phone numbers, and I started saving all the cash that I could. I was anxious, but things were finally looking up. I didn't really know what to expect cost-wise, though, but I knew this was the best option, and the one that I could most likely afford. I let my worry take the back seat, and then tried to focus on things that I actually had control over, like my mood and how I performed at work. I scraped together a little extra cash, had a couple of good nights out, and just relaxed. Things were good, and if I let them, maybe they'd become great. Sure enough, I get a call a full day earlier than I was expecting. Simon was ready for me. He'd finish up with his last customer. The fix was easier than he first diagnosed, and the car was back on the road again. More music to my ears. I was starting to write all my problems off at this point, like a true sucker, until you get something in writing, or even better, and see the work with your own eyes. Never take anyone at their own word. That's how all of these marketplace websites work, and it makes for a very deep headache. We exchange information, and I gave him every little detail that I could about my car. The normal stuff like the year, the make, the model, and symptoms of the issues that I was having, that kind of thing. He gave me the address to his garage, and the time that I should arrive. Everything felt professional for a guy that I just found online. So, I was even more enthralled with getting it all done and finally over with. I told Simon, "Thank you so much for your time," and that I would see him tomorrow. The address that he gave me was about a half hour away on the side of town that I wasn't super familiar with. He told me to be there by 10 a.m., and I didn't want to be late, so I planned on leaving at 9 o'clock. That never happened, though. I woke to my phone buzzing around 5 o'clock in the morning with Simon. He said that his day had been thrown off schedule because he had an appointment later on in that day that he forgot about. He didn't want to leave me hanging. He asked if there would be any way possible that I could bring the car to him now, so he could at least take a look. I didn't work today, was already awake, and plus I just needed this to happen already. I told him I would be there as soon as possible. He sounds super excited, said goodbye, and I started getting ready. I blasted through a shower, pulled some clothes on, and scarfed down this microwavable breakfast. Then I hit the road. I don't even think the sun was up yet. We wanted to empty out even more of our belongings to see if we can get the money pile up to $1,000. I was starting to sell some of my collector items, like antique chinaware, paintings, and things I largely considered just extra. My husband was on a mission to move his big 11-piece pearl drum kit. He played a bit in college. It was just one jam band that maybe had a half a dozen shows throughout his life. But for some reason, he always held on to that drum set. In the back of his mind, he always wanted to come back to it. But now, 10 years had gone by, and he hadn't so much as even picked up a stick during that whole hiatus. He realized that the drum kit was really just a dream and was something that needed to go. We came up with a fair price and added it to our ever-evolving Facebook Marketplace offering. It was the highest mark item at the time and was going to make more than double the amount of savings that we accumulated. We started to get some bites, but they were mostly just offers that my husband wasn't interested in entertaining. People wanted to make trades or payments or just make lowball offers in general. My husband wasn't having it, stuck firm on the price. He knew what that kit was worth, and he'd already moved the price down significantly. The price was right. Now we just needed to wait for the right buyer. A week or so later, I was home alone. I had the day off. I was going through my normal morning routines when I saw that I had a notification. Someone had commented on the post about the drum set. He said it looked great. It had an amazing price and would love to come take a look at it. He ended his comment by asking if he could send us a DM, to which I replied yes. I finished up what I was doing, the laundry or the dishes, something like that, then called my husband, Mitchell. "Hey, someone commented on your drum set," I said. "Does he seem serious?" He asked. "I can't tell yet. He just commented on it. But he's the most serious person so far. He wants to come take a look at it. What time are you going to be home?" I don't know," Mitchell stammered through the phone. He was a site manager, and they were putting up a new building. His hours during this project could vary. I'm not really sure. So if he's wanting to see it this morning, or even afternoon, and you feel comfortable, go ahead and let him come by and take a look at it. The price is firm, though. This is just purely a quality check of the instrument, he explained very clearly. Sure, sounds good. Anything special I should mention? That it's been collecting dust for 10 years, and may as well be brand new. I got to go, though. I love you. I love you too, I said, and then hung up. That was pretty much all I wanted to know. Make sure he was okay with the guy coming to look at it while he wasn't here, and if there was anything special that I should say. Other than that, we lived close to our neighbors, and I knew them pretty well. Also had a decent amount of security within the house. A camera, a gun, that kind of thing. Robbery would be risky for anyone coming into our house, or at least so I thought. I hit the guy back on the post and told him that we were good to go, to which he followed up with a DM. He said his name was Ryan, and that he was very excited about finding such a killer deal. I gave him a little background info on the drum set, and that I would be home all day if he wanted to swing by and take a look at it. Ryan said he had some other things going on, but could stop by around 1:00 p.m. I was just a few hours off, and it suited me perfectly. I gave him our address. I told him to hit me back on Messenger if anything changes, or if he had any trouble finding the house. With that, he signed off, and I resumed whatever I was doing. I actually looked up a YouTube video and decided that I was going to clean the drum set, and I wanted to know the best and safest way to do so. It really had collected a healthy layer of dust. I wanted it looking good for whenever this guy came around. If Mitchell came home and I had the thing sold, boy, he'd be happy. After I got it dusted and shined up, I went and took a shower. I still had plenty of time before Ryan was supposed to show up, so I figured I'd get some more of my own chores done before I did the showing. I hopped out and started drying off. And then I just got this weird feeling. I couldn't place it at first, but it was like there was something that I didn't recognize beyond the bathroom window. We had one of those weird fog glass windows, so you could just see blurs and colors. No real definition through the glass, but there was something bright red in our driveway. At first, I thought it was maybe a neighbor or a delivery driver. I snuck into the bedroom and got dressed. As I quietly listened for anything weird, footsteps around the side of the house, or maybe somebody already inside. I really didn't know what to expect, so I kept my phone handy just in case. I snuck out to the kitchen and looked out the window. There was a red hatchback parked in the driveway, right behind my car. Okay, not the weirdest thing, but definitely unusual. Just as I was getting ready to put on my sandals and ask the neighbors if they know anything, I see something. There's a man outside the living room window, essentially standing in the front yard, nowhere near his car. I keep an eye on him, and I don't really panic at first, because he looks like I'm not sure. Maybe he's confused, lost. He looked like a little kid. It's really hard to describe. Definitely a full-grown man skulking around my property, though. But the look in his eyes was that of a child. It's weird. Still, I pulled up my phone and had my husband's number ready to dial. This guy was picking around our garden, mostly the herb patch, where we grew a bunch of stuff in little squares near the front of the house. He touched just about everything and started helping himself to links of rosemary and thyme, handfuls of basil leaves, mint, even oregano. When he had this nice little stash, he took it back to his car and tucked it inside the console. I figured he was going to hop in the car and leave, but to my surprise, he went back to the area near the window and started fiddling with the hose. He got it unwrapped from the holder and turned the knob, and then started watering the herb garden. He gave it a few spurts, then put the nozzle in his mouth and started drinking from it. He did this for like 10 minutes. No joke. After he was satisfied, he made sure the hose was untangled, then started walking over to his car. I kid you not, this man washed his entire hatchback in my driveway with that hose, with my own water. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I was so perplexed with what I was watching. I didn't even bother to stop him. This guy was clearly crazy. Or maybe he thought he was at a different house. But either way, it was my entertainment for that afternoon. When he was done rinsing his car and having a sip, he walked the hose back over and wrapped it up on the holder, then killed the water just as he found it. Okay, some semblance of normalcy, I guess. I'll never forget watching him pull his phone out and then putz around the front yard, Facebooking or whatever the hell he was doing, like he was just at his own house. Now, I really thought this was a case of mistaken address. He must be from out of town. Thought he was at his sister's house or something. Maybe he knocked while I was in the shower, and I didn't answer. Now he was just waiting around. But then it happened. He put the phone to his ear. Then my phone started vibrating. I was receiving a Facebook message call from Ryan, the guy who was supposed to come over in an hour or two. He was the weirdo looting my garden and helping himself to my hose. I shook my head and answered. "Hello," I said. "Hello," he said. Super weird start. "Is everything good? We still on for later?" I asked, staring right at the back of the guy's head. Yeah. I was actually going to ask, could we move up our meeting? A bunch of stuff came up later, and it'd be easier for me to come take a look rather than later. Sure, how about noon? I asked, checking the clock. That was in 20 minutes. Perfect, he said, throwing his hands in the air. I'll be there in a bit. Thank you so much. and then we both hung up. It was the weirdest thing watching this guy lie, then react to his own lies. I was really put off by the whole thing, and called my husband right away. I was not very pleased when he didn't answer the first, second, or third time that I tried to call his phone. They were in the middle of putting up these massive steel warehouse buildings, and the phone service was really bad beneath all that metal paneling. Whatever the case, I don't like how everything was progressing. I'm looking down at my phone, deciding what to do, if I should call the police when I hear him knock. I look up, and there he is, peeking through the glass by the door. He gives me this creepy little wave. This was the exact kind of nightmare that I envisioned with my husband not being home. I stood there like a deer in headlights while Ryan continued knocking on the door. To my horror, he turned the knob and just pushed it open. Mitchell hadn't locked it behind him when he left this morning for work. I couldn't believe what I just let happen, and that I failed to make any kind of call to the outside for help. "Hi," he said in a slow, creepy voice. "Are you Erica?" "Yes," I said, trying not to sound shaky or scared. "Are you Ryan?" "Yeah, sorry. I've been knocking for a little while." "Didn't mean to freak you out or anything," he explained. "Yeah, it's just that we agreed to meet later at like 2:00 p.m. I wasn't expecting you this early, or to be poking around my garden," I said. A slow smile split across his face. "Oh yeah, you saw that." "Yes, I couldn't help myself," was all he said. That was it. No other explanation about showing up early or lurking around my property. I was becoming sick at this point. "So, can I see that drum set?" "I have cash." That brought me back to the moment. I said, "Okay, it's right back here. Maybe this all is just a fluke." This guy is excited to get the kit for such a steal. I led him inside the rec room, and the guy started going off about how pristine it was. Love the vintage look. Love how preserved it was. All that good stuff. This guy was on his hands and knees, inspecting every little hinge on the frame. Then he starts telling me about the old band that he used to play in, how they went by the wayside after the frontman and songwriter got locked up for selling drugs. He was just a fill-in guy for a while, taking gigs as a sub for other bands on tour, or local acts around town who just needed him for one night. Got to learn a lot about genres and what he liked to play during those years. And suddenly, I realized this guy had been talking to me for like 40 minutes, going on and on and on about his whole life story. He hadn't so much as turned an eye on the drums since he started talking. And now, it was just all about him. Was getting that weird vibe again? I didn't know what to do. Ryan was making himself at home, walking from room to room, giving himself his own little tour and complimenting everything that he found. I couldn't tell if this guy was just high or crazy. Either way, he would continuously keep giving me these creepy little glances over his shoulder. "Look, I have a lot to do," I finally said. "Do you want to buy the drum set?" "That's what you're here for, right?" Yes, he said. "The drum set? It's perfect." "I want it." He pulled a bunch of money out of his pockets. Disorganized bills crumbled and stuffed at random. He counted out the amount that he needed and kept asking me over and over and over again what the amount was. It was a nice round number. I really couldn't figure out why he needed me to repeat it so many times. He gave me the money and then started breaking the kit down and then shucking it out to his car. He talked the entire time, like he never took a breath, continually talking about what he was going to do with his drums and the plans for his weekend. It was like this guy thought he knew me or something. After he got the drums loaded up, he actually tried to come back in our house. And thank God my husband got home around this time. Ryan's entire demeanor changed the second Mitchell's truck rolled into the driveway, like he'd been caught out or something. He went from looking like a curious kid to menacing and troubled. He didn't speak to my husband at all. Just simply said thanks, climbed into his car, and left. I never heard from Ryan again, and thankfully haven't seen him either. The whole scenario was probably nothing, but I can't shake the feeling that I dodged something scary that afternoon. In hindsight, it just seemed like he was probing, seeing how far he could take the situation before I would start to react. I misjudged everything from start to finish and felt like a dummy for putting myself in danger. I guess if you're going to make online sales, that's just the name of the game. I was taking a road trip with my good friend Carter to visit some other friends from college. The drive was pretty far, about 15 hours, but we thought with the both of us, we should be able to do it in one long go. I started driving first, then about 4 hours in, Carter took over. The plan was for me to sleep while he drove, but I genuinely couldn't. I don't know what it was, but I was never able to get comfortable. So, by the time it was my turn to drive again, I was pretty tired, maybe even more so than I was before he took over. I was still able to keep my eyes open and pay attention to the road, but somehow I never noticed the gas tank getting really low. We were driving Carter's old Chevy, which didn't have the fancy tech to alert you when your tank is low. There was just a gas gauge that I never even looked at. Wasn't until the car started sputtering that I quickly realized we had nothing in the tank. Carter quickly woke up and started searching on his phone for the nearest gas station. But not even 30 seconds later, I had to pull off the highway because the car wouldn't accelerate anymore. I felt so stupid. Even worse, Carter said the closest gas station was 4 miles up the road. We were kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was just plains all around us, and there were no other cars on the road. We talked over our other options for a few minutes, but ultimately Carter decided he'd walk to the nearest gas station and bring back a canister while I stayed and just watched the car. Maybe not the best plan, but it felt like a waste to call for help and have to pay $200 just for some gas when the station was still within a walkable distance. Although it was 1:00 a.m. and dark outside, Carter didn't seem bothered as he left the car and started heading down the road. Within a minute, he was out of sight. I sat back and basically just thought about how stupid I was for getting us in this situation. But just a couple minutes later, I saw headlights coming down the road from up ahead. They came down and passed by, but they were going much slower than they should have been. I think the speed limit was 55 or 60, and they passed by going maybe 15 or 20. I watched in the side mirror, and they didn't speed up after passing. They slowed down even more, eventually stopping and doing a 3-point turn to come back around. Honestly, I didn't want to admit I was out of gas or needed help or anything, and I didn't have to. They came back down the road and passed by even slower this time, like maybe 5 miles per hour, probably staring through the windows at me before picking up speed and heading back the way they initially came from. What was that about? I kept my eyes glued to the road for the next few minutes, waiting to see if they came back around or not. I had a pretty bad feeling about it. Maybe it was just my gut, but I started to think something could go pretty wrong soon. I got my phone out and called Carter. I just wanted to let him know, and maybe to hurry up if possible. But the phone rang all the way through. He didn't pick up. That definitely made me worried. But maybe he just had his phone on silent or lost service along the road. I waited a minute, then called again. Still nothing. At this point, I definitely wasn't being rational. But I made the decision to ditch the car and try to catch up with Carter. I think it had only been 10 or 15 minutes since he'd walked away. So if he was still walking, surely I could jog and catch up in just a few minutes. I got out and made sure to lock the car, then started jogging down the side of the road. It was real quiet out there, so quiet that every time I took a break from running, I'd notice the ringing in my ears, only because there was not even the slightest sound to drown it out. I jogged for 15 minutes. I thought I would have caught up to Carter by then, unless something made him start jogging or running for some reason. I decided to pull out my phone and call him once more. And it was just then that I heard the sound of it ringing. It was very faint in the distance, somewhere off the side of the road. I looked out at the nothingness past the shoulder of the road, and just barely, I could see a light glowing in the grass. My body tensed. Carter, he didn't respond. I couldn't see anything at all, aside from the dim phone screen glowing. I took a few steps off the road and into the grass, calling out again. Finally, I got a response. I could faintly hear Carter's voice, coming from somewhere near where the phone was, but I couldn't tell what he was saying. I hurried closer, and Carter yelled again, and this time I could hear he was telling me to get down. I still couldn't even see him yet, but I did what he said, ducking in the grass. And that's when I looked back and saw a car coming down the road. I immediately knew it was the same one I'd seen moving slowly, just like before. They were looking for us or Carter, I guess. They made 3 or 4 turnarounds, slowly passing the area and very obviously searching for us. Once it seemed like they finally left, we got up and booked it to the gas station. Carter explained that the guy initially pulled over and tried to get him to get in his car. He said he was extremely creepy and really didn't hide the fact that he had bad intentions. After Carter refused, the man stepped out of his car and Carter instantly took off running. I guess the guy thought he'd just continue running down the road, so he got back in his car to chase him. But Carter ran off the road, jumped in the grass, and just hid. At some point, his phone flew out of his pocket, and he was too scared to get up and reveal himself, so he just stayed hidden. Anyway, we got to the gas station and were able to get help. We also told the police about the guy, describing his car and everything, but they never found him. It was very much a horrifying close encounter, and I feel really bad even still for being the reason we were put in that situation. One thing's for sure though, I'll never forget to fill up the gas tank ever again. Music. This was back in 2014. I almost never went on road trips back then because I rarely had time to take multiple days off just to drive, plus the additional time to actually enjoy the vacation. However, I was in between jobs when my family was planning a surprise birthday for my dad turning 50. Back then, gas was way cheaper than it is now, and flying was a lot more expensive in comparison to the gas prices. So both to save money and because I didn't have a job at the moment, I decided to make the drive. To be safe, I made it a 3-day road trip. So, after the first full day of driving, I pulled into the nearest motel and booked myself for the night. It wasn't the nicest place, but I didn't mind. I slept in until 11 o'clock, then packed up and opened the door to head out, only to be startled by a man standing right in the doorway. "Excuse me?" I tried to get past him, but he didn't really move, so it was a bit awkward. The man looked mid-40s and had heavy bags under his eyes. Just overall, not the kindest face. As I moved the rest of the stuff into my car, he remained creepily standing outside the motel room watching me. Good thing I wasn't staying there any longer. I checked out of the motel and headed back onto the road. This was my longest day of driving. I planned to get at least 10 hours in. The first while went pretty good, I'd say. A lot of it was through towns and cities. And it wasn't until 5 to 6 hours in that they faded out, and it became more rural, long stretches of road. Once I realized towns were getting few and far between, I stopped at the next gas station to fill up. I paid and started the pump, then headed inside to get a coffee for the road. When I was heading back to my car, though, I saw someone pull their car up really close to mine. Like from the front, it looked like their bumper was touching the back of my car. It was a deep red old Corolla. Nobody was outside of it putting gas in, and the windshield was tinted. I couldn't see anything at all through it, but knowing someone was in there, I couldn't shake the sense that they were watching me. I took the pump out and got back in, leaving the gas station. Almost immediately after that car left too, again, never having put gas in or anything, and pulled up behind me to merge onto the highway. I was hoping this was all just a coincidence, and just continued with my drive. I noticed them behind me for a while, maybe 5 or 6 cars back, but as the sun set, I couldn't really tell what cars were what. I could only see a cluster of headlights behind me. As it got later, fewer and fewer cars were out, and I went about 4 more hours without seeing that car again. I'd almost entirely forgotten about it, figuring it was never anything to begin with. I was more concerned with trying to keep myself awake now that I'd finished my coffee. The nearest main city was still 2 hours away, and I really wanted to make it there and get a nicer hotel. Maybe even check out the city in the morning. But that was only if my eyes would stay open long enough. I thought maybe if I stopped to get another coffee, not even for the caffeine, but just for the distraction of constantly sipping on it, maybe it'd be enough for me to power through the next 2 hours. At the next gas station, I merged off the highway. Right away, I could see it was closed, the convenience store section. I was pretty disappointed, but I did need to top off my gas anyway, so I pulled through and started filling it up. Almost right away, I saw a single pair of headlights pull off of the empty highway and begin down the exit ramp toward the gas station. This place was already creepy, as is just a standalone dark gas station with nothing around it. Couldn't even see past the outdoor lights. So, when I recognized the car coming down as the deep red Corolla from the other gas station, my heart rate instantly picked up. I couldn't stop myself from the eerie thought of if I was being followed.